estate space. I'm your host, Ciaara Hoffman. And on today's call, we have Emma Powell of Highrise Group. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much. I'm really excited about this one because it's been a while since I've done just a purely commercial real estate deep dive.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I'm excited as well. Obviously, we met in person when we were in Salt Lake City. So, I know a little bit about your story as well, but obviously our listeners would like to hear it. So kind of tell us, where you started in what did you do before commercial real estate, first of all? And then how did you make that transition into commercial?
Yeah, and I really appreciate getting together in Salt Lake City. It was really great to meet you in person. And I feel like I probably got more out of the conversation than you did. So it was great to just sit down with another investor and your husband and just talk about your journey and where you're going, where you're coming from, and some of the current things that we're experiencing success and trials with, because you really had a lot of insight on some of the challenges that I'm experiencing right now. And so that was really fantastic. So as far as where I got started, I was a stay-at-home homeschool mom, had a bunch of kids, and I had a cottage business, a photography business. And so I'd never really seen myself as having a career because I was just going basically from little business to little business. I had gone back to business school and gotten my bachelor's degree. And I think I turned 40 like a week later. And then about 3 months after that, my husband lost his job in 2017. And we were living in a house in Texas that we had basically, it was supposed to be the forever home. We had done a major remodel on it, forced a lot of equity, got refinanced. It basically a live-in burr is what that ended up being. And then when he lost his job in 2017, we just started scrambling around looking for a new job because we just weren't really prepared for a layoff. We had tried to get prepared because he had been laid off in 2012. And I knew that in the tech industry, you basically are just trying to stretch from layoff to layoff. Wow. And so he was fortunate. He didn't get laid off a whole lot. We had some friends of ours who were every year or two, and it just seemed nonstop with some of his colleagues. Yeah. And in our case, we would get 5 or 6 years usually before layoff, and we were averaging that. And so we knew that it was coming. And we tried to prepare, but once it actually happened, I realized I'm not making enough as a photographer, just part-time photographer, to really cover even the bills for a month. I mean, I could cover a portion of them every month, but we couldn't do the full portion. So we knew we were going to have to dig into our emergency fund, which was pretty small at that point. I think it was about 3-ish months, and we had just never really been able to put away the full 6 months. We'd never really been able to develop our ranch in the back. We were going to put self-storage units out there, build a rental house out there. And we were just really struggling to just get any of these goals. We were kind of on that thing where we had to pay cash for everything that we did. And our neighbor came to us, the one who actually sold us her house, and she had 2 acres and a mobile home next door. And she came to us and she said, I'd like to sell my 2 acres to you. And she offered us a phenomenal below market price. And at that point, we had maybe half of it saved up, and we told her no, because we didn't have the cash to pay for it. And that would have been, it was right off of I-35 in South Austin. Yeah. I mean, it was prime real estate, and it had a new state road coming through, like a commercial connector between a couple of the communities. It was just a fantastic piece of property, and we turned her down. We had another neighbor a couple of years before that, before we moved into that house, who developed self-storage units from the ground up, and they were beautiful Class A facilities. And he asked if we wanted to learn how to do it, and we said sure. But then we never really did anything. We never really went to him. The whole idea of getting loans and investors and all of that just felt like, oh, that's risky, right? And we just weren't prepared for what it was going to take. And he had basically retired when he was 50 and was kind of pursuing his other passions. And we really looked up to him for that. But at the same time, we never really took action. So by the time we left Austin, I think that we were feeling like we had missed a lot of boats. We had missed a lot of opportunities. So when we got to Salt Lake City, when he found a new job in 2017, we sold that house, basically came with that chunk of cash. And I had to sit down and ask myself some hard questions about what I was going to do with this next chapter of my life, because I didn't want to restart my photography business. And I was kind of kicking myself for not buying any rentals while we were in Austin, this great booming town. It was great opportunities. We'd made good money off of the houses that we did have, even through 2008. And I felt like we need to really finally just put our money where our mouth is. And I started going to a lot of business networking meetings and real estate investor clubs and things like that, and just started getting some education on what to do. And because I had some dry powder from the house that we sold, we had budgeted a portion of it for purchasing our primary home in Salt Lake. And the rest of it, I said, well, we made the money in real estate. I'm going to take it and go make a real estate business out of it. And my husband at that point just chalked it up like Monopoly money. And he said, go for it, because I've got a good job and I can cover all the bills, and we don't need your photography income anymore to do things like family vacations or, you know, piano lessons and such. And so he took over basically all of the household expenses, and I went and I started working in my real estate business, and I didn't pull any income out of that. I just reinvested 100% of what we made for the next, I think it was about 4, almost 5 years that I was doing that. And my goal at the beginning of it was to protect us in the occasion of a layoff, that we would have maybe a good year that he had to look for a job, because we had known close family members who had lost their jobs and been out for a year or more. And that happened several times over the previous couple of years. And so we said, if we could last for about a year, then we should be in pretty good shape. But it was not even the first year of my investing business where I realized, like, this isn't just a layoff protection. This could actually make it so that you could get laid off and never have to go back to work again, like early retirement. And when I realized what was going on there, I shifted my focus from active investing to building up our passive portfolio so that we could have reliable cash flow. So that in the eventuality that he got laid off again, that we would be able to basically say, you don't have to go back to work. And so last Thanksgiving, almost 5 years to the day that he got laid off in 2017, he got laid off again. And it was somewhat unexpected, but at the same time, we were planning on quitting in the next couple of months anyway. We just knew that it would be tight and it would be lean, but we knew that we had to do it. We had faith that we could. We didn't know exactly how we were going to do it, but we knew that we would figure it out. And sometimes you just have to take that leap of faith when you've been preparing or learning about something, and you're about maybe 50 to 80% confident that you can do it. The last little bit, you've just got to take the leap and learn by doing. And so that's what we're doing right now.
That's crazy. So obviously, you know, with your husband kind of being in this industry where it's just layoff, you basically work between layoffs, right? It kind of has that huge risk factor and that motivation for you to, like, okay, we're going to create something here where we need to have some stability. So, and, you know, I love how it kind of transitioned more into this is going to be kind of an early retirement kind of deal. So obviously, you know, your husband being laid off just this past Thanksgiving was a huge shock, I'm sure, for both of you. So tell me kind of about what did you have going on as portfolio wise when that happened, and what was the growth pattern like? So you started off kind of doing single family, and then what did that transition look like going into more of the multifamily?
So when we started out, I definitely wanted to go straight into commercial. I didn't want to mess around with being a landlord or any of that. I think I thought about doing some landlording, but I realized that that's more of a tether than a passive income. It is fairly passive because you're making money while you sleep and people are paying your rent, whether you're sick or in the hospital or what. So in the sense, it's fairly passive, but I knew that to scale the single family portfolio to the size that I would need it in order to completely replace even his W-2 income, much less, you know, build wealth and have a lifestyle design type of thing. I didn't think that my single family or small multifamily, you know, duplexes, triplexes could really be scaled to that point. I knew it would be a full-time business at that point of just managing my properties or having good enough properties that I could put a property manager on one. The more property managers you have and the more spread out your single family portfolio is, the more problems that it introduces. And so I feel like you really do have to farm a certain area and get as few property managers on your portfolio for a single as possible, because every meeting you have with your property manager takes time. And so the more roofs or the more units you can stuff into one property management meeting, the better, right? And I've noticed that with commercial real estate, it's like a 16 unit with a different property manager in a different city takes just as much time as a 150 unit with a property manager in this other city, and he may have 2 or 3 buildings in that city in this guy. So the number of properties, it seems to be what takes time, not necessarily the number of units. And so I was starting to experience that I was wholesaling seller financing deals, and I did a couple of those deals, and it just wasn't really for me. It was a lot of cold calling, and it was a lot of hustle, and I just didn't really think that this was a good fit for what I was trying to accomplish. And so basically, I just decided that I was going to kind of get out of that business and take some of the cash that we had and flip a couple houses. I'm like, maybe if I can flip a couple houses, I can build up enough cash that we can go buy a multifamily. I was thinking like a 12 unit or something like that. My husband's hometown where we went to college. And I quickly realized when we started identifying properties that nobody would give us a loan and we needed to bring in a partner to sign on the loan because we didn't even have a single rental at that point. And so we were like, okay, well, we better go network some more and find somebody who can sign on this loan for us, who can partner with us, that we trust and that we want to be in a business relationship with. Because at that point, we'd met a lot of people in our real estate clubs, but we hadn't really developed the deep kind of relationship you need to have a business partner. I didn't know how to form business partnerships. I was still a little bit scared of them. That's like getting married and everybody has such terrible things to say and your partner stole all your money. And so I was still a little bit worried about that kind of stuff. And so we just started trying to maybe buy a couple houses from wholesalers, flip those. And I ended up keeping all of them as rentals because they made sense financially as rentals. And so I ended up with this little army of, small rentals. I think I ended up with about 10 residential doors between a couple of singles and duplex triplexes. I sold a couple of them like rent to own seller financing that actually performed. Some of them didn't, and they're still rentals. And I still was looking for commercial properties. So I found my first one was a 50 unit, about an hour south of my husband's hometown and about 2.5 hours north of Salt Lake City. And that was a city that I had identified I wanted to be investing in because every time we drove up to see his parents, we'd drive through these towns along I-15. And I thought, hey, this is where we need to be investing. We don't know Salt Lake City. We're too far away from Austin that we do know, but we do know this tract of land. And so we started identifying there. So we bought that commercial property. We bought a couple of more in Little Rock with some partners in Dallas. And then we bought another one in that same town in Idaho. And so we just started getting more commercial properties under our belt. And I think I had, I don't know, maybe I can't remember. I'd have to go back and redo the count. It was a couple hundred units. And then we did a high-rise entitlement project. Our intent was to actually go vertical with this high rise in downtown Salt Lake City. But when we got the warehouses and we were managing those for a couple of months and we got all the permits and did all the architectural plans with our engineers and our architect and demolished the warehouses, and we brought in our big LP partner, our general contractor partnered with us on that. And we specifically were looking for a general contractor who could sign on our loan and basically be like the big partner that we were looking for. And so they came in, we expanded the project even larger. And then eventually they brought in a limited partner who wanted basically too much equity. They decided they want to be a general partner instead of a limited partner. And the dilution was just unacceptable, where we're like, okay, we're going to have to wait this many years to get our money back out. And it's a lot less than we were planning on without this dilution. And so I kind of cracked a joke to the owner of the construction company. I said, at this rate, you ought to just buy us out. And he was like, would you be open to being bought out? And because they had told us all along, we don't want to buy you out. We don't want to buy you out. We need boots on the ground. We want partners we can trust, all this. And then I said, yeah, in this case, maybe it's worth looking at. So they basically came back with an offer we couldn't refuse. And we were like, where do I sign? So we actually sold that high-rise project. And I was able to take that cash that I made from that project. It was a quick return. Like, I think it was a year that we held that. Yeah. We got short-term capital gains on that project. So I think we only had it for like 11 months. And it was where I was like, hey, can we just hold it for like another month, 6 weeks, so that we can kind of get past that threshold. But my partners had 1031 options identified already, and they needed to move. So what we ended up doing with that cash is I had a big loss that year. We had a 220 something unit in Texas under contract. And we just didn't really feel confident that we could get the loan or raise all that capital. It was like $5-6 million. And we were like at $2 million, and earnest money was going hard. And then our loan guarantor fell through. And so we were needing to come up with a huge commercial loan application fee and really and put more earnest money down that was going to go hard. Like there was another installment due. And we already had some hard. And I was just looking at this like, I don't actually think we can get this over the finish line. So we either need to recommit, bring more people on to help us raise capital, which is illegal. So we were like, how is that going to work, right? We can't just have people just raising capital. We need people in here to actually help us run this thing. And I was really dreading like that 5-7 year timeline, because I felt like we were getting close to being able to retire. And
Yeah.
every new property that I bought was like another 5-year commitment. And so when we decided to pull the plug on that one, I was very sad. I lost a bunch of money from all that earnest money and our lawyer fees from negotiating the purchase and sale agreement and getting started on our syndication documents. It's our due diligence with our property manager. They charge, per unit to go and look at all our inspections, travel, all of that. We ended up collectively losing a lot of money, and I took the brunt of that. And so it was a terrible feeling to lose that much money, and it was a terrible feeling to lose that property. It was like our big crowning type of property, and all I could feel was relief. Like, I didn't actually want to run this thing. I'm not an asset manager. I had learned that from the previous properties. My partners were all probably thinking that I was going to be this come in and dominate as an asset manager. And I kept telling them, like, no, I do not. This is not what I do. I need you guys to do this. I will help you know what to do. I will help design systems, but I'm just not going to run this thing. Yeah. And so with that relief, I kind of walked away, and I knew once we had our Highrise contract negotiated and getting ready to sell that, I felt like, well, all these losses are going to offset that short-term capital gains big time. And it did. And we ended up even with a refund that year, despite how much we made on the Highrise. That loss and then all the other depreciation ended up with the tax savings alone. What I made more than covered the losses. And so even though it ate into what I made, it still was more than my husband made that year. And I felt like, okay, I don't want to do any more active projects like this. But that income tells me like what's possible here. And I really believed it because I had like money in my bank account. So what we did is we set aside a year's worth of income, of his income. And then I set aside the rest of it to just go invest in a bunch of projects, more or less in a not a limited partner, but just a lot less of a general partner role, like where I'm mostly just consulting and just don't have as much of a hands-on role. I'm more of a serial entrepreneur where I like to put deals together. And I want to turn them over into competent operators as soon as we have their systems designed. And especially once it's stabilized, I want to walk away. So that's what I've basically done with the projects that we have. So I think all in total, between what we have sold and what we still own, either in a major or minor capacity, it's just under 1,000 units. And I remember my husband like 2 years ago telling somebody we had maybe 100 units at that time. And I said, our goal is to get to 100 units this year, or buy a 100-unit property or whatever the goal was, and which we didn't hit. But he said, the next 5 years, somebody said, what's your 5-year goal? And he said 1,000 units. And I was like, I do not want 1,000 units. That's a big business. It's a lot of work. We're passive income investors. And just by keeping in the game, just by keeping going, we've almost hit that goal. Basically our next large project will be over that mark. And so I feel like it's great to look back and see what you've accomplished and how you've weathered, how you've weathered the challenges, because that buoys you up with confidence, because more challenges are coming, especially right now with the recession that we're going into. Those past successes of just keeping at it one little chunk at a time has really helped me to believe that we'll figure this out too. We don't quite know exactly how yet, but we will figure it out. So that's what the portfolio looks like right now. And that's kind of where we're pushing in our business, is to be involved in more deals in a smaller capacity.
Love it. And you mentioned the recession, which I want to touch on in just a moment. But first, I want to talk about how you really learned about, getting into syndications. It kind of sounds like you just kind of learned by going to local REIAs and meeting people. And you kind of had a lot of ups and downs. Most people that, we interview on here, they bought into a mentorship, and they kind of almost like they bought their network, so to speak, because now they have all these people that they connect with. But I feel like I want to give you kudos, because, it sounds like you kind of like piecemealed everything on your own, talked to people here and there. And you, you did this thing fairly quickly, just kind of doing it on your own.
Yeah, I was actually lucky, and I didn't realize it at the time when we moved to Salt Lake City, that the REIA structure here is really exceptional. And it's not like that all over the country. So I joined basically all of our local REIAs and just started meeting people. There was a lot of overlap in who was in which REIA, but there were also people who just went to each one individually. So I was able to meet a wide swath of investors in Salt Lake City. And I've since found out we have one of the highest per capita real estate investor populations in the entire country. It's just a very entrepreneurial type of city, and it has a lot of really go-getter type of people. And so landing into this network was so quickly after we moved here was not necessarily a factor of me doing much. Like I said, I was going to business networking meetings, and some of them were real estate meetings. And we were going to lots of business networking meetings in Austin when my husband was looking for that job after that layoff. But we didn't come across one real estate meeting. They do have a REIA, but they just don't have as many things going on as they do here. So that for me was lucky. And I don't know if I would have really gotten the idea or gone the direction that I went without the influence of those REIA meetings, that they were exceptional. And so for people who are living in hubs for like multifamily, like Dallas, especially, where there are a lot of multifamily mentorship groups and meetings, it's just kind of like a mecca for that. And so they fall into it and they think, oh, this is fantastic. And even in Austin gets a little bit of that, like, carryover. So I've since gone back to my Austin friends and had a lot of them reach out to me and be like, yeah, we've been owning multifamily for years. And I had no idea. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's kind of geographical. And I think that the IT guys, or in the tech sector especially, we tend to gravitate towards high tech cities and startup boom kind of cities, because those are the people who are hiring. So that's how we ended up in Austin and Salt Lake, and had this great real estate tradition and entrepreneurial tradition. And we didn't find it in Austin, but we've certainly stumbled into it in Salt Lake City. I don't think that getting a mentorship is a bad way to go. I know a lot of people who started there and have had great success. I also know a lot of people who've started there and extremely frustrated. So I think it's important to realize it's no guarantee. And even with hard work, this is a difficult business to break into. And so what we ended up doing by cobbling this together, I would meet commercial real estate investors at REIA meetings. They would have supplemental meetings, like maybe a lender would be in town and they'd have a lunch and learn or something like that. And so I just really stayed on top of that rich event schedule that we had in Salt Lake City, and just started attending a lot of events. The speakers themselves, I would always meet them afterwards and network. One of them in particular, Adam Adams, he was at that time sponsoring a lot of conferences in Denver, and we would go out there, drive out there and go to these conferences that he was putting on. He became a mentor to me. I think I bought a course from him about how to raise capital. And then I bought another course later. I ended up at a mastermind where some fund managers who were promoting fund management courses. And so I bought that course and went through that. And I feel like, so just kind of cobbling it together. But that's just the way I do things. I'm not the kind of person who really wants to go in and get like a fully curated path. And just because it's usually a lot more expensive, and I'm very frugal. If I decide to do something, I'm going to do it full bore down the rabbit hole. And I knew if I put $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 at something, I had to be fully committed. And I at least need to make my money back. And I just wasn't really sure if I was ready to just leap in and go like to the wall that way. And so because I was still looking for passive income and retiring early, and spending all this money and having to build this business to support, this thing that I bought, I just wasn't sure. And so I just felt like I'm just going to keep going from failure to failure, fail forward fast, or whatever it is. Success breeds more success. And so I knew that I could do this, but just the resources that were out there, some free, some low cost, some kind of a medium ticket items. And I didn't want like a whole package. I wanted to build my own network. So that's basically where that came from. And in the information age, everything is actually totally free. The networks can be free. I really do prefer conferences, buying a couple of courses. And if your local REIA meeting is any good, or your local multifamily is any good, just start going. Like, do the cheap stuff first. Pick the low hanging fruit first. It's very easy to think that these high masterminds or expensive programs have some secrets or have a better network or they really do not. If you want to go that direction, that is totally fine if you're ready to do it. But don't go into it thinking that it's got a better network or secret information that's going to help you. It's more like just an accountability group of somewhere you're happy and you're excited to show up and to do the work, because you have a network of people who are supporting you. That's what you're buying.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can't be sure that that's what you're going to get in that group, then it's really not the right group. And so buy an accountability partner, buy an accountability group, buy a network, but do not buy secrets, and do not try to buy into elite relationships, because those things are organic and they have to be built naturally. It's the same as if you try to buy followers on a social media platform. They're not real followers. And it's always better to just build it organically, because you're just putting out great stuff and you're doing great work, rather than there are no shortcuts.
Absolutely. No, I like your perspective. And one thing that I do want to touch on, we have got a few minutes left on the show here, is, you kind of mentioned a little bit earlier about the recession. Can you speak into a little bit of, how that has been affecting you, and kind of where you see things playing out in 2023, heading into a possible recession?
The one word is diversification. It brings me a lot of comfort, because honestly, I am scared right now. I have never been through a recession as an investor. We've been through a recession as homeowners, and felt like we were able to put aside, like a year's worth of income, protect ourselves. And we ended up kind of skating through the 2008 without any major damage. Our house didn't appreciate, wow, right? We didn't lose it. We didn't lose a job. And then at the end of it, we had this huge pile of money that we used to then go remodel that kind of was supposed to be our forever home. So we didn't really have our recession stripes, so to speak. I felt like we were prepared, but nothing really ever went wrong. Nothing really bad ever happened. And so it ended up actually being a blessing to us, because of that pile of emergency cash we had set by. And so it's the same. We were not diversified during that 2008 recession, but we are diversified during this one. We have our year's worth of income set aside. We have a diverse group of properties from our single families. We have a couple of different cities that we invest in. And then we've got a commercial portfolio. And I also have my investing club, where we basically pool our money to go buy into deals and have some sort of non-executive managing interest in those deals. So it allows us to help out when, especially, things are not going well. Interest rates right now have been really challenging. I have at least 2 properties that have reached their cap, basically, or just another one that's just about to reach its cap, where the debt service is no longer being covered by the income that the property generates. And basically, capital call, or me as a sole owner having to put more money into it each month to feed it, while whatever we're going to do, sell it or whatnot, comes around. And so that is pretty scary when you see that happening, and your income is being eroded by basically your adjustable interest rate going up in the rapid pace that it has gone. But the diversification that we've done across the units that we have, across the cities, and across the different property types that we're investing in, has really helped to kind of calm my nerves that everything's going to be fine. Well, we are sitting on a lot of equity that I don't feel like we can get at right now, because the refinance rates are too high, that if we refinance it to get any cash out, basically we have to refi at a higher rate. And so why would we do that unless we want to get cash out of it? So the cash is trapped in there, because the payment goes up so much that the thing no longer cash flows, even if we raise rents. It's just not a good plan. And then selling right now, we're just holding off on selling anything, because we don't want to have to get caught up in the people who are doing the desperate fire sales, because maybe they can't meet their debt service, and they don't have an emergency fund, and they don't have multiple streams of diverse income to help to settle things out. And so we're going to watch in the spring. I think we may sell probably 2 of our smaller multifamily, like a double and a triple. But I'm not sure, because we really just need to test the market in the spring and see how it's doing with interest rates. So we have a couple of houses tapped that we would consider selling in the spring, that are sitting on a fair amount of equity. And then we would probably take maybe 10% of those proceeds to live off of for the next 6 months. And then the rest of it, we'd reinvest into projects that are a little bit more passive on our part than small multi. So that's basically our plan for the recession. We are, because we're now location independent, because my husband's laid off and no longer working, and my kids are already homeschooled. We're going to go take basically an adventure where we're going to go hike the Arizona Trail for, I think it's probably going to take us like 3 months. You basically go from the border of Mexico and walk 800 miles to the border of Utah.
Wow.
And because we're bringing our kids with us, we're planning in like an extra month to get it done. It usually takes about 2 months. So we're going to do that. Then we'll probably go spend some time with my husband's family in Idaho while we rent out the house that we're living in. because we just feel like if we're going to be gone for 6 months or 12 months or whatever, like we'll rent this place out and then get some Airbnbs, hotels. We'll probably go stay with some family members, my cousin, the cousin train, the cousin couch train, where we're going to make our way to Florida and spend a couple of months there and just enjoy the REIAs down there and see if we can get tied into the multifamily community in Orlando. And so as we go basically from Idaho to Florida, we'll just take our time and see all the sites along the way and stay with all the people that we've missed, old high school friends and cousins and interesting Airbnbs and things like that. So we have enough income coming in that we can fund like a fun trip like that. And then after that, hopefully we're hoping, because that's another year, almost a year and a half, that the recession will be kind of ebbing at that point, and then we can make decisions about what we're going to do next. So right now we're only planning, 6 to 12 months in advance. My sister had cancer recently, and we were asking her a lot of questions about an impending move and some changes that they were making. And well, what are you going to do about this? And what are you going to do about that? And she finally said, I don't know what I'm doing beyond next week, because cancer really changes you. And when she said that, it really moved me, because I felt like cancer does completely change you. You don't ever look at your life in the same way again. And she's surviving and didn't need any invasive treatments. And so everything is fine, but it really did change her outlook on life. And she tested positive for that cancer gene. So this has been hanging over her for over a decade. She knew it was coming. And so you can't deny that changes the way you live your life. And watching her go through that. And then my other sister had a son pass away from cancer just over a year ago. And those experiences, they change you, even though I'm an observer watching it. My oldest brother is also quadriplegic from a serious accident. I have another family member, her husband just recently passed away unexpectedly. We cannot live in a way where the safety and the security and doing the same thing and the status quo is the way that we live our lives. We just, it changes you when you see like how short it is and how silly worrying about money actually is. Now, I am still scared. There's still a big unknown and a big uncertainty out there. But at the same time, we're going to take this opportunity as a silver lining to spend more time as a family, to get creative on how we're doing our finances, and finally go on an adventure that we've been wanting to do for many years. And now's the time, and no recession is going to stop us from taking that opportunity.
I love that. It's amazing to hear your story of how you had this goal of, I'm going to create this passive income. So my husband gets laid off, we don't have to go back to work. And, you've basically in, 4 or 5 years, you were able to create this. And now that it's actually happened, you're just going to go travel. And so I love that plan.
I think it'll be tight for the next couple of months, maybe up to 2 years. But we're in a part of our lives that we're calling lean fire. So financial independence, retire early. The lean number is the number that you need to be pulling in so that you don't have to go back to work, but you do need to spend that extra time still building up some sort of active income and increasing your portfolio so that you can get to fat fire where you don't have to work at all. So you go from employed to self-employed, maybe business owner, side hustler, over into the full investor category. So we're somewhere in the self-employed category right now, and we're still working over to the full-time investor. So when you quit your job, it doesn't mean that suddenly you have enough money that you never need to work again. That's fat fire. So we're still working on that. And we recognize going through this lean fire time might be a little bit stressful because we got to get creative, but at the same time, recognizing that there's a progression. Robert Kiyosaki talks about it very well in his quadrants, where the first one is a W-2 worker, the second one is self-employed, the third one is a business owner, and the fourth one is an investor. I'm an investor just by my nature, my personality. I'm more of a long-term thinker, and I really do like that lifestyle and like that whole thing. I'm really not much of an entrepreneur, actually. I have been for many years, but I have always been trying to figure out how to get into that investor quadrant even before I knew that was a thing. So we are still working our way over to there. We're probably maybe 50% there, and we'll get there eventually. We'll figure something out.
Yeah. I mean, it's step by step, and you've gotten to the point where at least, you don't have to find another W-2 for your family. So I think you're in a good place, despite all the challenges that you've had to overcome. Now, I want to go back to earlier. You mentioned having an accountability partner, buying an accountability partner, kind of investing in that. And I do happen to know from our meeting, in Salt Lake that you do have an accountability program. So can you, I want to, give you the opportunity to kind of explain more about that and how can people get in touch with you if they want to get more information?
Yeah, my website is www.highrise.group, HIGHRISE.GROUP. If you go to /contact, it has all of my contact information on there, from texting to all my social handles, booking some time on my calendar, free 30-minute call. And then if you go to /accountability, basically talks about my one-to-one program where we sit down and we just really go over your high level vision board, needs and wants, and then drill down into what that means at a practical level so that you can take action on those things and make sure you're working on the important stuff rather than on the stuff that feels like you're doing work, but you're not actually getting closer to your big goals. And so learning what not to work on is sometimes just as important as learning what to work on. And this was all born out of my investing club, where we've got a bunch of people in there who may be frustrated, syndicators or smaller fund managers who are looking to expand their deal flow and expand their negotiating power. So maybe they can only bring 500, maybe even $1 million into a deal, and we can bring in 500 to $1 million as a club, and we can then jointly go and negotiate for better terms with that operator because we're coming in as a unit. And so that club basically was struggling with the amount of information and the amount of work that it takes to basically do this as a business rather than as a passive investor. Because they're like, I want to be an active investor, I want to be a syndicator, but I joined a $30,000 mentorship and I didn't really make any progress. I'm just lost. And so we come together and they're like, wow, this is so much. We're like looking at deals every single week and crunching deals and putting groups and pools together and figuring out like how we're going to manage and contribute to this thing. And it's just a lot. And so I had a couple of people ask me, like, is there some sort of maybe side group that we could start off that we could just get together and just work on our goals and make sure that we're making progress? Because I'm overwhelmed by all of this. And so I said, yeah, let's put it out there. So the club actually formed an accountability group that was just free for everybody to jump into. And I ended up realizing like, hey, there's really something here that people need and is really missing. And when you put other people's needs first and solving other people's problems, sometimes a product develops out of that. And that's definitely the backstory of this. I said, if I put together a one-to-one coaching program where you basically get just dedicated time with me on your calendar for a month or 6 weeks, would that be beneficial? And they said, go for it. And so I was like, all right, well, we'll put it out there. And that's basically what we've launched, our New Year's resolution special that runs till the end of January. And then we're just going to keep helping people as best we can, as far into the future as we possibly can, because I feel like there's a real shortage for this type of thing out there for somebody who's like, if you want to get into commercial real estate or you want to level up to commercial real estate or level up in commercial real estate, maybe you've done a 12 unit and you want to figure out how to do a 100 unit, or maybe you've done some things, but you've never done new construction or whatever that thing is you're trying to get your hands wrapped around. Having somebody who's been there and done that before you. And, I'm a mom of 6 kids. Like I'm not putting up with any crap, but I'm also really respecting of people's choices and people's ability to get things done for themselves. If you just need somebody to hold you accountable to getting to the goals that you say that you want, let's get it done.
Absolutely. I read something recently where they said, they did a study actually of people that were successful and actually achieved their goals. And they found that there were 5 factors, but the most important factor, number 5, was if you had someone you were accountable to, and there was a timeline. So you had like a weekly meeting with this person and, you dedicated like by this time, I'm going to have this done. That made your chance of success for your goals 95%. So I think it's really important that we all kind of have that accountability to somebody, whether it's, and I think it needs to be somebody that you kind of feel that accountability towards. That's not like, your spouse where you can just kind of blow things off maybe, or, it has to be kind of someone outside that you can really hold yourself accountable to, whether it's a coach or something like that, a mentor. I feel like that's really what it comes down to. So thank you so much again for being on the show, and thanks everyone else for tuning in. And if you enjoyed today's show, please give us a 5-star review. Every review helps us to reach more and more people that are looking to get involved in commercial real estate.
Thank you so much.
Today's show was sponsored by Synergy Capital Investments. To download your free multifamily investment guide for beginners or to schedule a call to learn about our upcoming investment projects, go to thrivewithsynergy.com. That's thrivewithsynergy.com or click on the link below.